Good afternoon. Welcome to the Denver Startup Week main stage. We are so excited to be here with you today. My name is Brian Elizardi, and I am the Director of Innovation and Community Impact for CSU's brand new campus here in North Denver. And we are so excited to be a proud sponsor of Denver Startup Week and to bring you this important conversation. When you think about some of the top skills that you need to have as an entrepreneur, you need to be paying attention to the macro forces out in the world. You got to be a critical thinker. You got to be someone that adapts on the fly. You've got to be collaborative. If you look at all those sort of big skills that you need to achieve success in startup and entrepreneurship, farmers tend to have that in spades. And they have for generations. And for many, many, many generations, farmers have had to come up with rapid solutions to problems on the fly. And so there's so much talent, there's so much great energy, there's so many ideas that are embedded in our rural communities and in our farmers. And today we have a fantastic conversation for you to go deep into the mindset of what folks in ag and ag tech are encountering and how that begins to inform the way that we think about the future of innovation here in big cities and in small cities and in large communities and in rural communities. So to jumpstart things, I am delighted to introduce a good friend and a colleague, Jordan Kraft Lambert, who comes to us from one of those farms. Jordan grew up in northeastern Colorado on a dairy farm, and she has spent her entire career straddling this nexus between rural industries, farms, ag, and then also the business community. And I am delighted to be able to have her facilitate this very important conversation. We've got some great guests for you, really excited to dive into this. So with that, I'm gonna get out of here and hand it over to Jordan, who's gonna give you a warm introduction to our panelists and take you behind the scenes.
Thank you, Brent. Y'all can sit down. Y'all sit down. Thank you so much, all of you, for being here today. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the run of show before we dive in. The first thing that we're going to do is talk about what I mean by human-centered design. What the hell does the panel actually mean? The second thing we're going to do is introduce each of the panelists. Then I'm going to ask some questions, and then y'all are going to ask some questions. So make sure that you're getting those questions ready. So when we talk about human-centered design, who here has heard that term before? Okay, so about half. Okay, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. For those of you who haven't heard of human-centered design, how many of you have seen a door in the distance, and you're walking down the sidewalk, and you see a handle on that door, and you think to yourself, I'm gonna pull on that handle, and then you get there and realize that you should have pushed, right? That's bad human-centered design. That's somebody who didn't take the time to understand which way that door was going to go and the signal that they were sending with the industrial design of that handle to the customer, right? The customer that's going to open the door. Another example of human-centered design. How many of you have filled out your taxes using the IRS form? How many of you have used TurboTax? That's an excellent example of human-centered design. Intuit does a really good job of centering the user and helping you as a customer be a human instead of a robot, which is what the IRS would like you to do. One other example, I think, of human-centered design is how many of you have used Canva? If you haven't, you should. Yeah, the young people in the audience have. If you haven't, you should, y'all, because it's kicking PowerPoint's ass. Because it's very human-centered design. It's really intuitive, really good stuff. So that's what we mean when we're talking about human-centered design. And what we have here today are three panelists who know an awful lot about how to center their user as it pertains to our food and ag innovation ecosystem. Because without our ag tech innovation system, none of us would be able to be here right now. We'd all be out there hoeing weeds. So we're really excited for all of you guys to be here with us today. So I'm now going to intro everyone. We're going to do a standard intro. I'm going to tell them a little bit about the company, and then I'm going to tell you about their apocalypse entrance scene if they were in a movie about the apocalypse. So we're going to start with Nico. Nico's on the end there. Nico Engelbert is the CEO and co-founder of Seedlinked. He has a PhD in plant genetics from CSU and has worked for Pioneer and Alpharex as a plant breeder on canola and alfalfa, respectively. So really long history in the ag space. Founded in 2019, his company SeedLinked connects growers, breeders, chefs, universities, seed companies, and consumers through a groundbreaking crowdsourcing platform that revolutionizes seed development and commercialization. So it's democratizing seed development, right? And his post-apocalyptic seed, in a dramatic post-apocalyptic setting, Nico's entrance scene unfolds as he emerges over the rugged horizon of a Colorado mountain valley, his silhouette against the crimson sky, riding a makeshift bicycle laden with bags of precious seeds salvaged from the remnants of a bygone world, symbolizing his mission to sow hope and cultivate a brighter future. Yes. Then over here, we've got Sarah. So Sarah Jennings is the CEO of Orion Labs. Sarah has run prize competitions at X Prize. She's worked in the space industry. She ran a machine learning lab for PhDs and postdocs in partnership with NASA. She has worked at CSU Boulder. I'm so sorry. That's a faux pas. Should have been CSU. CU Boulder. She has a BA in linguistics from the University of Arizona and a master's in organizational leadership from CU Boulder. Her company, Orion Labs, has developed an obstacle detection and avoidance system for mobile robots to operate safely in uncontrolled outdoor environments like you would find in ag tech. Her technology uses sensor fusion and onboard processing to keep robots safe by helping them to remain mobile so they don't get stopped or stuck, to maximize their uptime, so to keep them from running over objects that they hadn't ought to, right? We call that tractor blight. Farmer joke. Not everybody caught that one. It's when a farmer runs into something and ruins it. It's called tractor blight. So in her post-apocalyptic wasteland, the camera pans across Sarah as she stands in her rugged Carhartt overalls, flanked by her trusty companions, Walter, the loyal Boston Dynamics spot robot, Alpaca Bot, the farm's trusty guardian, Hamish, her trusty Highland cow. Her drone hovers above, keeping a lookout as the intruders approach. Her husband steps out of their battered blue pickup with Crushy, the rooster, perched on his shoulder. He's convinced this is true. In real life, he's convinced he's a parrot. Yes. Okay. In this harsh new world, her motley crew stand united, a resilient beacon of hope as the strangers advance. Sarah Jennings, everyone. And then we've got Scott. So Scott earned his bachelor's in chemistry from Virginia Tech and a PhD in chemistry from CSU. Got that one right. Yes. He transitioned to materials engineering during his postdoc at Lawrence Livermore, where he developed new materials for 3D printing. Scott joined an entrepreneur program at Lawrence Livermore to learn to commercialize the material he discovered in his PhD at CSU. So he's commercializing some CSU IP. Founded in 2020, Ames is a materials science company creating novel materials for agricultural use. Ames is funded by the CDC and USDA to create food-grade sanitizers to reduce the instance of foodborne illness arising from cross-contamination. So food safety, keeping you all safe. So the camera opens on a tight shot of Scott's face, light filtering in through a boarded-up window. He hides from the outside world while he cans food from his garden and carefully monitors his still for making booze. The camera zooms out, and it's just the regular world, and he is simply a recluse that avoids social interaction. Hashtag true story. Yes. Round of applause for Scott. Yeah. Okay, folks. So, Sarah, can you tell us about the customer that you serve? Who are they? And what was it like discovering them for the very first time?
Yeah, so our company is focused on companies that are in the mobile outdoor robotic space. Most of those are robot as a service companies in ag tech. But when we were going through our interview process, we wanted to take it a step further. We had a little bit of understanding of the robotic world. A lot of our people had come from that space. And so we actually wanted to talk to their end users, which was the farmers. And so we wanted to understand their issues with adopting autonomous technology. And both of those, both our customer and our end user, have issues with obstacles, with robots stopping too often or running into things.
Yeah, so you have two people that you're really trying to solve for, the people that you're actually going to sell to, and then the people that those people sell to.
Yep.
Cool. Scott, how about you? Who's your end customer?
So as you said, we're a food safety company effectively, and we're currently primarily trying to serve the sprouts market. But we didn't start there. We actually were looking at first pretty much any crop that needs mold protection or maybe even bacterial delivery we could use in our material. And we started by, through our contacts at CSU, we found a potato grower in Colorado. They had a problem with mold, so then we did our customer discovery, called, I think, every potato seed grower in the United States, and no one else had that problem. So we pretty quickly realized that that wasn't going to work, and thankfully through that, we listened to the customers and found out that seeds have a lot of contamination issues, especially sprouts. So that's how we ended up kind of listening to people and working our way towards sprouts.
So it helped you pivot a little bit too. You were like, oh my gosh, we have the right problem. And then later.
Yeah, lots of pivoting.
Yeah, we'll get to the pivot later. Nico, how about you? How'd you find your customer?
Yeah, well, we have, as a two-sided platform, we have two customers, two users. We have the ag innovator or the seed innovator in one side that can be university extension, seed company. On the other side, we have the grower who is an innovator, as you said, and also is looking for the right seed to plant and need information to plant the right seed for the context, for the market. And so I was a plant breeder, my other co-founder was a farmer, so we were our own customer. I mean, we were a problem insider facing problems, and as a breeder, I was constantly shocked to interact with grower who has so much information on my variety, and I was never able to get those insights to breed and develop better variety. And on the flip side, we were generating so much information that never reached the grower to make the better decision. And so creating a platform where all information can help develop a product, and on the other side have a grower using this information to plant the right seed, just came together, yeah.
Well, and I just want to clarify a little bit about what Nico does. How many of you guys have used Strava for like finding a really great trail or something like that? He's doing Strava, but for seeds. So when a farmer has to choose their seed variety, there's a whole lot of things that they have to think about, like the right climate, the right amount of precipitation, the right soil situation, a product market fit. Like, can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, more than most farmers innovate and experiment constantly. Like you use Strava and you run or cycle, but imagine connecting all those information together, those insights, if you connect them, the power you can have instead of everybody experimenting on their side, isolated among each other. If you connect this power, what can be the power for everyone, for the innovator, but also for the grower. And so, that's ended up being seedlings, yeah.
Perfect. And so when each of you guys prepare for a customer interview, how do you prepare for it? And then how do you execute it? How do you make sure that you're walking away with the very best insights that are actually going to guide your company? Go ahead, Sarah.
Okay, great. So one of the first things that I do is I make sure that I know who I am talking to and what the company is about. I also make a list of questions, and I try to keep this as consistent as possible with some variations depending on the company, so that you get enough data points from the questions that you're getting. Grab my pen and paper, and the biggest thing for me is just to get ready to listen, because those customer interviews are really like 90% you listening to them. It's not a sales pitch time.
And how often do you do customer interviews?
Well, we pretty much spent the entire last summer. We did over 100 interviews with NSF Corps, but since then, it's really just been, finding those specific other companies that you want to talk to, and so, I might do a few a month in addition to keeping up with the other customers.
And Scott, how do you prepare for a customer interview and execute it?
So I completely agree with everything Sarah just said. You can't direct the conversation too much. The goal is to listen and hear what problems they actually have. And I found early on that if I went in with a script and had questions that I wanted to ask, I ended up derailing the conversation away from where the customer was naturally leading us. So I actually try to prepare very little now. and just stick to a very basic, let them talk as much as possible, keep that conversation flowing.
Yeah, I very much agree with that. I think, and really the way you ask questions, so listening and letting flow and being a catalyst and keeping asking and why and tell me more about and listening and keep flowing and recording. I tend to record as much as I can because I can't process everything.
And so each of you are building your teams. How do you get the customer insights that you might have heard or somebody on your team might have heard communicated to the rest of the team? Start with you, Nico.
Yeah, that's a very good question. Recording, synthesize everything is essential. Then brainstorming session together, and then go back to the drawing board, going back to the customer again and again and again, different customer. And really, synthesize everything. Working as a software, we have designer and keep prototyping new design. And if we do testing feature with customer, we do rapid design and then throw back to the customer, and then get more feedback and so forth.
Yeah, that's a really good question that I don't know if I would love to hear if someone has a great answer for. Because if you take 2 to 3 pages of notes per interview, then if you do 100 interviews, you have so many notes to go through. And if you're doing them one after another, then it's really hard to take the time and discuss all that. So we've tried Excel sheets where we bend the information. We've tried just summarizing things, so it's a very quick read. We've tried all kinds of things. But right now, one of our team members is looking at ChatGPT and other large language model to just take these 300 pages of notes and summarize for us. So I have no idea if that'll work. I really hope so. But thankfully, someone's willing to try it for me.
I think what we did when we were doing the bulk of the interviews was I had the team members help come up with the questions that would kind of shape the direction that we were headed, because I'm not going to have all of the right good questions. And then from each interview, I would have like kind of a little bit of a summary for the key points, and then we'd kind of continue building on that question list so that we were starting to ask those right questions. And I also had on a few of the interviews that I felt were like key interviews, other members of the team, because again, I'm not going to have the best questions, and everybody has different perspectives from when they come away from those interviews.
What was a burning question or a question that you'd like to ask of a prospective customer or in a user interview that really either is important to you going forward or has really had an outsized impact on the direction of your company? Can you tell me a story about a question that you've asked? Get specific.
Yeah.
So I have an example of one that I didn't think was going to be an actual question until recently. We went to a Sprout Growers Association conference and talked to a lot of growers there. And my concern was, are you using bleach? Because bleach, I don't want to go into all that right now, but it's bad for people, for the environment, not great for the sprouts,
and
everything.
It's used a lot in wheatgrass smoothie sprouts, right?
Yes, and
okay.
Nearly ubiquitously for sprouts. Sorry to break that to you all. But I wanted to know, do you want to avoid using bleach? Because I would assume the industry doesn't like that. And they are required to dispose of that, so it's a very expensive process. And in talking to people and not trying to lead that question, people ended up admitting that they just dump it down the drain. So I would never have guessed that so much of our product concept is based around eliminating the cost of bleach for these people. And I was too scared to ask that because I didn't want to push that question, but it turns out they don't even dispose of it properly. Overgeneralization, of course, I'm sure many people do, but...
I'm sure your local smoothie
yes,
shop
yours is fine.
It's fine. That's a great one, Scott. Nico, do you have one?
I don't think I have as good one as you, Scott.
Sarah, do you have a specific question that's been burning or surprising?
I think the question that I started out with was like, what are your top 3 biggest issues? And I think that was where I got the most like insightful answers, especially when we were talking with the farmers. And we talked to all like the extension offices and everything. We're getting interviews from everywhere. And that's really where we were able to like kind of find our value proposition. and like the issues with like if a harvester goes down, that costs this particular farmer, which was amazing with bookkeeping. It cost him about $800 an hour for every hour that harvester was down, and that's if the weather and everything else cooperates. And so being able to like find those key issues was huge for us.
Yeah, I love that. I love thinking about human-centered design as a practice of being a heat-seeking missile for pain. Sounds like you found pain. You thought you were going to find it. Went somewhere else. What pain point are you solving, Nico?
Yeah, so a lot of, our clients are innovators that want to develop seeds that are locally adapted. They typically have not much budget. There's not a large seed company. And so they have low budget for testing. They're testing in only few locations. And by being collaborative with grower, each grower can be, in a sense, you test a site. And typically, collaborative research has been done with pen and pencil in a very archaic way. Also, that was silo. And by using digitalization, we really make collaborative research with growers a breeze and so much easier. We remove so much of the pain point and decrease the cost of collaborative research by almost a 10x. And so that really allow to innovate in a much bigger way, especially in the explosion or region of ag, where we are getting into a much diverse landscape of ag, where we're not going to have one seed we're going to plant on 100,000 of acre, but we're going to have so many different environments and practices, and so we're going to have products that are going to have a much lower volume, and so we need to be able to develop product at a lower cost because it's going to be a smaller market. And so we are removing those barriers of innovation. And on the other side, really, we explode the adoption, which has been a big issue for developing new product, by connecting all those insights from grower and making them available to also grower to find those products. And that it's really been a huge barrier for ag innovator trying to bring new product to have farmer innovate their product. And so by putting all those grower insights together, we really boost that aspect, yeah.
So helping your plant breeders really get as much data about different geographies as well as helping growers discover the next great.
Yeah, exactly. For example, a breeder was before seedling testing in 2 sites because it was so expensive and they were controlling everything. And now with seedlings, they can test in 200 sites for a fraction of the cost because each grower become a test site. And we crowdsource information instantly. And I really love what you mentioned about TurboTax. TurboTax has been the biggest influencer of seedlings. I didn't never tell you.
You didn't.
But the UX and UIs they've been using is really being core of how we build seedlings. As farmer is the center of seedlings, and they have no time. Everything needs to be fast. If we want information from them, it needs to be easy, super quick to do, very quickly understandable. And typically, collaborative research has been done very from academic down, very complex. The way questions were asked, the type of information, very time consuming. And we're trying to really flip this around, kind of TurboTax did with the tax. And this has been a game changer of the number of insight and information we were able to crowdsource and the engagement. Like, we have more than 60% engagement from grower in research project. That typically in collaborative research, we are between 15 and 20%. But it's shocking for academic because it can appear as oversimplified, the way we ask information. But I like what Steve Jobs says, that simplification is the ultimate sophistication. And it's probably the hardest thing we are trying every day is how to make seedlings and the way we crowdsource information, the way we interact with growers the simplest. And yeah, that's our biggest challenge, really.
Well, and building on a conversation you and I were having earlier today, if you have 1 million people with an opinion about how your product should go, you're trying to listen, you're trying to practice human-centered design and listen to all of the things that they're telling you, how do you decide which insights to listen to and which ones to politely ignore?
Do you want me to jump again? Yeah. It's the more vocal people can be the minority groups that you sometimes don't want to listen. So you just need to be super careful of the 1% hyper vocal that might push your development in the total wrong direction. So, and also as a founder, negative feedback or like, oh, you should do this, you get uber sensitive and you tend to like, oh yeah, I need to fix this right away. And it's like, wait a minute. This is like 0.5% of your user, like ignore it. But then we are fully collaborative the way we build the platform. And so we have a really good system to track down of all the feedback. We have thousands. We use ClickUp as a platform to really file every project. And we have thousands. And we have very good rigorous process of prioritization in the team. Like you need to fit the business goal, the target. And so every 4 months, we consider all the different feedback. We prioritize them. We look at the effort versus the benefit for each one. And it's a big task, but it's essential. If not, we get buried under feedback or we miss feedback. But yeah, the effort versus value of each one is essential to look at.
Okay, so you're kind of using that algorithm
Yeah.
for that. How about you, Sarah? How do you sift through all of, because you're doing lots of customer interviews. How do you decide that one's worth it, this one's not?
Yeah, so we take a look at a few things. One of them is our technology going to be able to solve their biggest problems? Another thing that we look at is this company going to have the volume of robots that we need in order for us to be sustainable as a company? We're going to focus on the ones that are going to have the larger, volume, and they don't always share that. So it is something that you have to sift around to find some data points for that. We also, aggregate some of that data as well. So things like power consumption and cost and things like that. Those are things where we're getting lots of different information from all of these groups of people, and we're making decisions based on where the most amount of people or most amount of potential customers are focused on.
How about you, Scott?
So sprouts were one of the largest vectors for foodborne illness. And ever since the 90s, the FDA imposed incredibly strict regulations on sanitization. So now they use this 2% bleach solution, which is actually illegal in a lot of countries. So again, I don't mean terrified, all this sprout fact.
Again, your local shake person is fine.
But that's why we went into this assuming that was the pain point. And the entire International Sprout Growers Association exists to kind of remind the consumer that sprouts are safe. And I think this year was the first year sprouts weren't on the top 10 most deadly foods or something. So it is working, and I think the industry is growing. So that's why we started, and that's why we went for our funding that we did, was to try to alleviate that problem. But then the more people we talk to, it appears every time we say, what metrics would you like us to hit for sanitization? They almost always talk about germination first. So we assumed that their biggest pain point was they have to use bleach or whatever the FDA is forcing them to do. But it turns out their biggest pain point might actually be germination or sprout quality. So right now we're in the process of considering maybe we're actually a fertilizer or a germination booster, and the side effect is actually sanitization now. So they're buying the product that improves their product, but it also has this side effect of they don't have to use bleach anymore. So it's not really where we expected, but we're in the process now of understanding what's the product they actually want.
One of the things that I think is really interesting about human-centered design seems to be like this taking a very specific use case, like really listening to an individual person and the pain that they're feeling, and then exploding it out and making it really big. Like how many people like this are there such that I can actually make a business model out of this, particular segment? So it seems like there's this sort of cycle between diverging and converging, to kind of move yourself along. If the customer insight is what's really guiding your customer strategy, then you're learning new things all the time, which means you're gonna pivot probably. And I think you alluded to this just a little bit, Scott, but you had a bigger pivot as well. So let's talk about pivots for a minute. Can you tell us how Ames Corp started and then
story? Okay.
What it is now?
So as you said, this is a technology developed at CSU. It was a silver-based material, and when we were studying it, we found out that the silver ions in our material were much more potent and active than any other way to deliver silver. So we decided that that would be a good antimicrobial application or antiviral as well. And we launched with this product concept of a wipe that is used in hospitals. And when you put our material down, it sanitizes surface for 24 or 48 hours. So if someone walks in carrying MRSA or some other pathogen, then it is killed on contact. So that was January 2020. And within 2 months, the entire country was very well aware of viruses and their like, sticking on a surface, or how do you, in any way, shape, or form, stop that from happening. And I think a couple months after that, there were several products launched by huge companies like Johnson & Johnson that were effectively our product. So within only a few months, we had a pandemic and got beat to market. So we had a lot of time, thankfully, because I wasn't making much money and everyone was at home anyway. But we took all that time to say, well, we have this compound or this material that's very good at stabilizing antimicrobial compounds. What else can we do with that? And during our first customer discovery process, we went through ICOR, and it was very clear how convoluted this, like who's going to actually pay for our product? Is it the purchaser in a hospital? Is it a doctor that recommends this? So we decided, is there something other than healthcare that we can start in? And so that's why we started looking at agricultural problems.
It's very flattering, right? That you were like on the path to something that Johnson & Johnson was like, yes, we're gonna.
I'm not putting any blame here, but they actually took the same name for the compound that I pitched at Lawrence Livermore and the logo. But just not talk about that in case someone's there is here.
Oh, man.
I genuinely, I think that name and logo was just low-hanging fruit because I came up with it. So I think it was probably pretty serendipitous. I don't think there was anything malicious there, to be fair.
That's very gracious of you.
Covering my ass, right?
Yeah, okay. How about you? What do you think, Nico?
Yeah, pivot is hard.
Yeah.
Seedlink was, the business model originally was like, okay, we're going to have an open source platform to boost innovation. It's going to be free. Everybody can use it. You're going to generate so much insight. We're going to build a marketplace. Farmer going to go on it. And with all the insight that generated, going to find the right seed and buy the seed. It's going to be multi-seller. It's obvious. We're going to take a 10% cut. It seems obvious and easy to build. It was absolutely not. And we did a lot of interview with grower, and they were like all super excited about being able to choose a seed with other grower insight. But we were undercapitalized, and we did not take much dollar in investment. And building a multi-seller marketplace is a much, much bigger endeavor than, it's not just like building a Shopify store, but you have to be digitally present everywhere, have huge investment in advertisement, and we were like looking at the KPI and the order, and there was literally no order, and we were like, okay, what's going on? And waiting the order, and we end up our pilot with like 200 order, where we saw like we had a target of at least between 5,000 and 10,000, and we realized that so many barrier, and we still see this marketplace as a long-term business model, but as an early on startup with low investment, it was definitely the wrong idea, because you need millions of investment to deal with digital presence, shipping, procurement, all those that are highly capital intensive. And so we went back to the core, and instead of being open source, we make our client pay about our innovation and trialing, and people were so happy to pay. And they're like, I love this. Sure, I will pay. And so now we are back to kind of our core, which is trialing. Yeah.
Sarah, how about you?
Yeah, so we actually started out for the NASA Space Robotics Competition Phase 2, and so we had a team of people, and that's how the company was started. So we were doing space robots in this virtual environment for the moon. But we had, an overall love of robotics and the robotics world, and we're very sympathetic with some of the problems that we saw there. And so we decided to submit an NSF Phase 1 focused on obstacle detection for robotics. And we successfully got that, and that's why we pivoted, and we have focused on that since.
Okay, so if a lot of human-centered design is about empathizing with somebody, that's about kind of feeling the emotions that they're feeling. But founders have a lot of emotions too. What was it like the day that you realized that you had to pivot? And then how long was it until you felt good about needing to pivot? Like, can you take us on the emotional roller coaster of being like, shoot, this isn't gonna work. What are we gonna do next?
For me, that was the first couple months that I was an entrepreneur. Yeah. And when COVID hit, the new business side of me thought, business opportunity, yay. But if you chase that and you're too far behind, then you're already going to lose. So I was under the assumption that this would like kind of bring awareness to people that they need this product and we should chase it. My co-founder, who's a much more experienced businessman, said, no, we're already too late. You can't chase the ambulance, as you would say. So that was hard for me to actually come to terms with. He's absolutely correct, and I realize that now. But at the time, I was like, well, if I have nothing now, I just quit my job and launched this company for this, and it's gone. But through his support and understanding, there are other opportunities out there. So it was a little hard, but it made sense to do, and we're better for it now, I think.
How about you, Nico?
Yeah, I mean, we had to look at the KPI, and it was hard to look. It was hard to watch. It was painful, and my two other co-founders were farmer, and clearly for them, the marketplace was the biggest value proposition. They were like, "But we have the tools. This is what we need to do. We need to pour more money into marketing, like every penny we had left." And I was like, "Well, if we do that, looking at the KPI is not going to do anything." And it ended up being very painful as they end up leaving the company because they didn't want to go to the different direction. And it was probably 8 months really painful. And to be honest, hitting burnout as an entrepreneur is a reality, and sometimes you have to face it. And in those hard moments and pivot and emotional, giving time to slow down and just pause for a minute. And that's kind of been my journey of the pivot, yeah.
How about you, Sarah? What did it feel like on day one? And then when did it start to feel better?
Yeah, so I think for us, we ended up getting the NSF Phase 1 at the exact same time that we won a NASA Tech Leap competition, which was for a suborbital flight. As you can imagine, Earth robotic things are quite different than a suborbital flight. So for us, the pivot was really exciting. We were having all of this really good things that were happening for us, but at the same time, then you have to figure out how are you going to be able to focus and prioritize. And for us, that meant we understood that for the NASA Tech Leap suborbital flight, that was probably not going to lead to a viable business in the near future. So we needed to make sure that we were focusing on the pivot towards this system for agtech.
Well, can you tell us a little bit about space and why agriculture is there's lots of technologies that come from space that go into ag tech. Why?
Yeah, so I can think of a couple of different similarities with space and with ag tech. Like you're dealing with uncontrolled environments. There's lots of different, more uncontrolled on Earth, but you're dealing with variable environments that they don't necessarily have perfect maps for those areas. On the moon, you're not having GPS. When you're out in the fields, you do have some of that, but depending on where you're at and a lot of places you don't have the internet connectivity as well for a lot of these different things. You're dealing with on the moon, the lunar dust, which is really terrible for your rovers. And then if you're in ag tech, you're also dealing with dust and the weather and the environment. So they're both in their own rights kind of harsh environments. That's the similarity.
Well, I'm gonna keep on you for a minute. So you live and work in Nunn, and there's a couple of reasons for that, and that's one of them.
Yeah, so Nunn has...
Where is Nunn?
Okay, yes. Nunn is a town of 500 people. It is practically in Wyoming, but it is about 30 minutes north of Fort Collins off of I-25. Very small town. We're in unincorporated Weld County. And we got 70 acres, and part of that was we knew we wanted to get out and be able to maybe have 10 acres, but we also needed high-speed internet, and none provided that. But we're able to test robots. We're able to test things out on drones. We have the environment as well, so we get extremely crazy winds. We get snow. We get, rain.
Like a farmer would face.
Exactly. Yep. And we've tried farming, so we're working on that route as well. So it kind of is the perfect space for us to be able to test out these technologies in real environments before we actually go and bring them, into an actual farmer's field. We're just pretend farmers most of the time.
I love that story. Well, and so I'm now very curious about like the founder habitat that allows you to do the innovations that you need to do for the pain point that your customer has. So you just talk about weather and intentionally locating yourself in a place where you have weather issues. Can you tell us a little bit about alpacas and the role that they play in your product development?
Yes, and that they're not just obstacles. Yes, so.
Or that they are,
Yeah, so being able to be in kind of a farming environment, we do have like cows and alpacas, and they are my pets, but they also act as different obstacles for us to be able to detect with our system. The other great part about living out where we are as well is that there's a lot of differences in the terrain as well, which you would find in a lot of different farming environments too. So that's been very useful for us.
Well, and so Scott, as a material science company, can you tell us a little bit about where you live and work?
So I live in Denver and work at CSU Spur. Is that?
Yeah, that's what I was going
quick
for.
little ad.
Yeah.
We're kind of a unique position since we pivoted from human health, and now we're looking at all these agricultural applications that we're constantly searching for new opportunities, and each time we find something that the company might be able to survive, or at least partially on, we pursue that kind of on the back burner and always consider these opportunities. And the best way, in my opinion, to do that is to start with professors, see what they're working on. They really understand not just the academics, but the industry as well. And then talk to them, they can introduce us to the industry, and then we kind of roll from there. But I mean, it's hard to beat being at Spur and actually next to the professors that are doing that actual research there. And it's enticing enough facility that the professors from Fort Collins come down as well. So I probably have worked with at least 20 professors in ag, some number around there at CSU. And primarily, it helps being from there and having the technology there. I guess it's kind of a trifecta, but being at Spur is very, very useful for us.
Well, and you have a co-working space, so like desk space, and then you also have wet lab space at Spur.
Yeah, and I thank you for pricing that very competitively for us, because it really
I didn't pay
is.
him to say that.
Really is a great deal. The facilities are phenomenal, and we have our own office with a view of the mountains. So, kind of.
Behind the fish tank, we have a fish tank full of little trout fry, and he's right behind it. It's cool. You should check it out.
That's how I point everyone to our office. I just say, behind the fish tank.
Cool. And Nico, so your software, and your team's pretty distributed geographically. So what's Nico's habitat like?
Yeah, we are near Madison, Wisconsin. A little bit like Scott. We are really benefiting with UW-Madison, who innovates so much in the regen ag space, organic ag space. There's a lot of research institute like Savannah Institute and other, and we are really benefiting from all this ecosystem. That I think you do a great job here, and you have a similar, and UW-Madison and Wisconsin doing a great job, and that's really we've been really starting to work a lot with. And we do have a distributed team. I will say will be my best choice, but in software and when cost is limited, it's easy to go offshore and have an Indian team that is a tenth of what it will cost here. And so, but we've been lucky. We have amazing team in India of between 4 and 6 people. And actually, we are launching the platform in India for organic cotton development. And it's been amazing to be totally offshore, and now our team there is just getting so excited to kind of see what they've been working on come in their neck of the wood.
Oh my gosh, so cool. Awesome. We're gonna do some rapid fire questions, and then we're gonna open it up to the audience. So get ready. So what is one of your stay sane hacks as a founder so that you can keep your head in the game and keep on going? Nico.
I don't know if it's because I'm French or maybe Latin, but a 25-minute snap every day is a must. And 2, intense exercise. I love mountain biking. It's why I love Colorado, and that, really keep me sane.
Love it. Scott.
Yeah, not to be that guy, but what he said, naps, pretty great, and mountain biking or just generally being in the mountains. That's honestly partially why I went to CSU in Fort Collins was I've heard grad school will be terrible no matter how good it is. It's probably going to be awful. And at least in Fort Collins, you can walk into the mountains whenever you want. So for me, that's anytime it's too much, just try to go escape.
Well, don't you have a nap room at Spur?
Yes.
You do. Yeah, that's
We're getting a cot
Yeah.
for the nap room.
Jordan, you gave me a tour of Spur and you didn't show me where it was.
Show you the nap room. Well,
It's our nap room.
I see. But I'm a CSU alumni.
Sarah.
So espresso, and exercise, and then petting a cow on occasion.
Petting a cow. Okay, that's a good one. That's a good one. How about books that have influenced you a lot in your founder startup journey? Scott.
So I come from a technical background and struggling very, very difficultly with business, but I found Milton Chang's Towards Entrepreneurship. He is a PhD physicist. He actually, through his customer discovery process, found out that what laser scientists need was a breadboard, a custom table. So he actually invented the laser table through customer discovery. And his book is about, he's got an incredible background, but how a scientist should approach entrepreneurship. So I highly recommend Toward Entrepreneurship for scientists out there.
Oh, I love that. How about you, Sarah?
Talking to Humans was a good short read if you're looking for that. And then on the flip side, I really enjoy reading books like Bad Blood and it's not the Culture of We, The Cult of We, just to kind of keep as a reminder to stay humble and to not fall into some of the same pitfalls as other founders.
How about you, Nico?
Yeah, me, maybe less original. I just love how I built this, and I love the story. I love podcasts, and I'm a big podcast fan, and I love the one with Ivan Schwinar on how I built this. It's a good one of my favorite.
Cool. Go Guy Raz.
Since this is so much about customer discovery, I feel like how I built this is almost always you just listen to people and then change what they were doing around whatever those people said back.
I agree, and persevering and failing is, I think, what Guy Raz succeeded to show a lot.
Oh, great podcast book list, guys. Very nice. Okay, audience, what you got? I can make this silence really awkward. Okay.
As you're going around looking for customers to talk to or prospective customers, what are the channels? You mentioned conferences as one big piece of that, but how else are you discovering people that might be potentially in market someday following a pivot?
So it's incredibly difficult, in my opinion, to find the right people to talk to. We've tried LinkedIn, just cold emails. So one member of my team figured out that if you search Google for like company name, email structure, you can figure out they do first initial, last name. So he would just make up email addresses and hope that they worked, and actually it worked surprisingly well. But honestly, again, like one of the other questions, how do you summarize? It's been pretty difficult to find the people. You can go to websites, you can just kind of try with anyone in the company and go there. But what we've found is a good strategy is I don't think direct messages on LinkedIn have worked very well for me, but if you find a second contact or a second connection that you know and ask that person, can you put me in touch with this person here? Or do you know them well enough to put me in touch? Then that warm introduction goes much farther. It's close to 100% success rate compared to the 2% for cold email.
Yeah, I had pretty good luck with LinkedIn. So that one was like a main one for us.
That's a cold reach outs? Or?
Yeah, it was cold reach outs. And then the other thing that we did that worked really well is that I always ended an interview and asked who are the next 3 people that I should talk to, and are you willing to connect them? And that worked out really, really well as well.
Yeah, for us, it was fairly easy because we're 2 problem insider, a grower and breeder. And breeder net, the community of breeders is small, and we knew a lot of them. And for grower, I really encourage to go in grower conference. There's so many all winter, and you can even create roundtable in most of those conferences around the topics. And then grower will, if they're interested, will come and you can spur discussion and interview, and at least in the space we are, yeah.
Love that. What else, guys? Yeah.
Hello. I was wondering, how do you, the first question was like, well, how do you build your network? Like, how do you get in touch with the farmers? But then how do you build enough trust for them to either expose their operations where you can identify problems? Are they the real problems? So it's like, you can ask them, hey, what are your top problems? They may or may not know, right? So I guess my first question is, well, how do you kind of build that relationship to where you can present problems, propose problems, and have them realize it is a problem? Like, for example, the bleach example, it's not a problem to them. They'll just pour it down the drain. Solved. And the second thing is like adopting your new technology. So the people I work for, it's an agency in Iowa, and as you know, like that's pretty big in the ag tech space, John Deere, Corteva, right? And some of our founders have experience working for them. Part of their issues is the farmers are often bombarded with people with ideas to solve all kinds of things that the farmers may not be interested in or might not have a price point, or even like on a hardware side, like how do we even install sensors and stuff, right? So kind of what would you advise for like an approach to like essentially, I guess what I'm talking about is building that relationship, building that trust, and building your network with end users and producers?
And I'm going to actually jump in on that one a little bit. So I'm the director of Ag Innovation and Partnerships at Spur, and a lot of what we're trying to do is really build the Colorado producer network so that they come to us. And we've been doing a lot of that recently. So if any of you do have ag tech and also food tech companies that need to connect with an end user, either a consumer who's going to eat something or a farmer who needs to buy your technology, we are setting up farmer focus groups to make that part a little bit easier. We have a pretty serious segmentation, and we do partner with Extension that's really robust within the CSU system to do that. So that's one way, but
Yeah, so for us, like talking to the farmers, because they're busy people, right? So we did contact a whole bunch of those extension offices, and I talked with them about like, what are your biggest problems? Some of them are like, pests are our biggest issue. I'm like, okay, well that's probably not, an avenue that I need to go down. But like labor was an issue, and so I actually talked to the potato administrative, and they had bought some carts for hauling potatoes that were autonomous, but they were saying that it was not actually offsetting the labor issue because it was still a lot of work for them to be able to manage it. So I think part of it is honestly just like listening to a lot of people and hearing what their specific issues are, and going to conferences, even like to your point of your pain points. Like we had, there was a farmer that was talking, and he said, I haven't decided to go down the autonomous tractor route right now because I don't want to have to go out in the middle of the field and figure out why in the world it stopped. So just listening to a lot of the different conferences and people and asking those questions, I think, be helpful.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a lot of strength in numbers game. And to your point, sometimes you will get people that are just cold. Like they'll probably realize halfway through the interview they don't know why they offered to talk to you. And maybe 10% are incredibly helpful. But in my experience, that warm introduction, like I said, we work with professors first and get a warm introduction to someone else. And when a professor that person knows says, oh, this is an interesting technology, you should consider, you should talk to them, then either it's binding for that person, or for whatever reason, they take us a little bit more seriously. And once you have that relationship started, it's pretty easy to send a 1 or 2 sentence update like, hey, thanks for writing a letter of support. Just want to let you know that we've hit this metric for this funding, and we'll keep you updated in a minute. So for me, maintaining that relationship once you're in the door, it's kind of just simple human decency, and keeping them updated is good enough.
Yeah, at Seedlink, we really leverage extension like Spur for UW, and it really helped us so much to get access to the pioneer farmers, that's the micro-influencer willing to put a little bit of time. And having a like CSU for us, UW, who is trusted, it was really an entry door for access to a lot of grower. Yeah.
I'm realizing that for those of you who don't know what extension is, most land grant colleges, so every state in the United States and many Native American nations have universities that are land grant institutions, so they have a federal mandate to be engaged in their communities, and so they have to have a core of people that's usually called extension, who are embedded in rural communities across the state. So in Colorado, we have extension agents in every county. So it's easy for us to call those people and say like, oh, hey, I need some apple growers. Help me out, Rogers Mesa. So that's how that happens. And I think we have time for one more. Oh, maybe two, no, two, yeah, go ahead.
Hopefully a quick one. What
Yeah.
percentage of your time do you spend or did you spend on these interviews, and how did you pay for it?
So the bulk of it we did through NSFI Core, and they do provide you with, I think it was $25,000 to be able to focus on those interviews and go through their program, and that was very intensive. I wouldn't say that I spent 60 hours a week, but it was pretty high up there.
We tend to do it in spurts. And the first time we started, we didn't have any seed funds, so I just did it for fun. But now we have some seed funds, and whenever we find an opportunity that we think is worth it, then we'll dedicate the time to that. But I would say overall, over the course of a year, it's a very small % of our time.
Yeah, we also had similar CSR funding as we had the SBIR. We had a decent amount of funding to do that, but we do that every day in a sense, like talking to customer, and I would say we maybe spend a little bit too much time talking to customer, but it's very important to build a platform.
And with that, I think we'll wrap up. And if you have additional questions, panelists and myself are going to be here. A couple of things. If any of you have burning dreams to build ag tech companies or food tech companies, please do come see us at Spur. We have a Food Innovation Center. We have the Ag Tech Innovation Center. And we also have the AFIM program. That's a 2-year master's program that's thinking about agriculture and food businesses. So thank you all so much for your time and attention. And thank you to our panelists.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.